The left is always advocating dense urban living, high-rises, European style, and to surrender the autonomy of your car and depend on light rail and subways for mass transit and urban parks. Ostensibly, they say this is a better use of resources. Of course, the people who are saying this, Gavin Newsom has a $9 million vast estate, right? All these people in the East Coast, Barack Obama, who said it, has 4 mansions. None of them are high-rises. Nobody wants to live like that who's advocating it. So his point is that there's another agenda they don't like to talk about. Once you put a lot of people in an urban society and they don't have detached homes and garages and cars, then they're dependent on the city for everything. They don't have a backyard, so they have to go to a park. And they don't have a car, so they have to get on a light rail or bus. They don't have a front door, so they have to take an elevator and depend on the elevator, communal. So it's all a communal idea, and therefore the state, the left, the people who are the engineers feel that they have leverage over the individual. So they can adjudicate the level of safety, law enforcement in the park, on the elevator, on the subway, not the individual. And that's why they hate the Second Amendment so much.
It's striking how Hanson frames this as more than just an argument about city planning. It's about power. The moment people lose the independence that comes with a home, a yard, and a car, they're no longer self-reliant. They're forced to rely on the state for safety, mobility, and even daily routines. That's why he ties it back to the Second Amendment. Because once control shifts to the collective, the individual voice weakens. And as we'll see in the next part of his analysis, this isn't just theory. It plays out in policies on crime, immigration, and who really pays the price for these engineered social experiments.
In their way of thinking, they control your life, and then by intention. So on this light rail in North Carolina, there was no charge. It was an honor system. So the state was saying, we're not going to discriminate against poor homeless people. They're going to get on here, and you can't take a weapon. If you have a weapon, you're going to be in big trouble. Even if you don't, look what happened to Daniel Penny. But he had a weapon, because we're not going to look for weapons. But if you ever use a weapon to protect yourself, we will get you. So what they're saying is, we are allowing a criminal element onto the light rail, and that should remind you of racism and crime and what the proper way of doing it. More counselors, more alternative sentencing, and you're going to get in your elevator. If you don't like it, then you better reach out and be less selfish and less white and less etc., etc. And that's what they want. And you can see the effects in Europe, where when you bring in a lot of immigrants, and the Europeans, not all of them, but a much larger percentage than us, live or outside the city in circular high-rises that depend on buses and trains and elevators and communal parks, then they're much more sensitive to 1 million people coming into Germany from the Middle East without audit, and they have to depend on the government to protect them. And the government might say, can't hear you. What do you mean? Oh, I can't quite protect you? Oh, poor baby, you're not safe. Well, maybe you should be a little bit more progressive. Read some critical race theory before I give you another police, that kind of stuff. And we have a lot of resources. We can make nice prisons, clean. They can be fair, they can be as compassionate as you want. But one thing they will do is tell people, you kill somebody, you hurt somebody, you're going to go in there and you're not coming out. And we don't really care if the people that go in there are all white, or if white people are 70% of the population, they're 90, tough luck. If they're 10% Asian and they're 50% Asian, tough luck. If they're 12% black and they're 60, tough luck. We don't care. We just don't want you to hurt the innocent. And the real morality are the people who don't care about the defenseless and the innocent, and they unleash these people and they never suffer the consequences of their own ideology. Never. They can afford sophisticated security systems. They don't need to go into bad neighborhoods. They don't take the subway. They don't take the light rail. They don't do any of that. Same thing about illegal immigration. And they do it because of DEI. And they say this is a protected group of people, poor immigrants. They have nowhere to go. California, we've zoned everybody out of a home. We want to make sure our neighborhood in Atherton and Fairville and Lafayette and Malibu is really good for us. We're wealthy, but we feel bad about that. So we're going to let in 3 or 4 million people that are illegal into California, and we'll send them to places like Kern County, Tulare County, the foothills, anywhere away from the coastal zone. And that's what they do, because Gavin is never going to see this. Boy, he's very quiet about all this. He's trashing Trump on social media. He has his expert influencers that write his X tweets, but he doesn't talk about there's nothing going on in Pacific Palisades. It's just a desert. And that's what they make a desert, and they call it, what, progress?
In this video, Victor Davis Hanson paints a vivid picture of how urban planning, crime policy, and immigration are not isolated debates, but parts of a larger project of control. Listening to him, I can't help but notice the sharp contrast between the ideals preached and the realities lived by those in power. They promote communal dependence while shielding themselves in private estates, far from the consequences of their own ideology. To me, Hanson's message is less about nostalgia for the past and more about defending autonomy, responsibility, and the basic freedoms that make true independence possible.